What's up, everybody, and welcome to Rock Video Rental. I am Brandon, and with me, as always, is Caleb. Caleb, what's going on?
Not too much. I mean, it's a little bit weird to be back. I mean, how many weeks did we have off? 2, 3?
Yeah, two, I think. Three?
Yeah,
Yeah, two, three, two.
maybe 3. Yeah. So we pre-recorded all the Friday the 13th stuff. So by the way, hey to all the new people. We know there are new people out there because we saw how many plays we got. So
Yeah.
what's up? Thanks for checking out Rock Video Rental. So we have more Halloween stuff for this episode, or horror movie themed. But yeah, so we had 2.5 weeks off because we pre-recorded those episodes. So now we get to jump right back into things.
Yeah. And this is going to be our last of the Halloween season.
Mm-hmm.
But what have you been watching?
Well, I actually have something to share because, I've had like 3 weeks to have things pile up.
I was going to say, you really have no excuse.
Yeah. Well, actually, ironically enough, I feel like each week I watch more than, any time before that. So I have quite the list. I'm just gonna list everything, and then maybe I'll have a little bit of a highlight on a couple of things listed here. Of course, been watching college football and NFL. Tis the season for that. And then I finished Brooklyn Nine-Nine. I caught up on Family Guy. My wife is watching Man with a Plan, which has Matt LeBlanc in it. Pretty decent show. It moved over to Netflix. I watched 2 memorable movies from when I was younger, and they're not at all horror movies, but I always kind of associated with them with kind of like the Halloween season because it's like murder, death, mystery, and all that. And so the first one I watched was actually the one that I recommended before, and that is Murder by Death.
Okay.
And dude, holy crap. If you watch that, and you recognize those actors in there, that had like a home run cast. Like Columbo was in there, and Obi-Wan Kenobi was in there, and there were a couple others that I can't get directly what they were from, and I forgot to look them up. But I mean, recognizable actors and actresses in that. But then I decided to watch the other movie that was very similar to that came out. I think it was maybe about a decade later. Clue totally had to have been inspired by Murder by Death because a lot of the same feel, a lot of the same kind of murder mystery concept and everything, and another cast that was a lot of well-known characters. So I
Mm-hmm.
watched that one. Then I decided to take a complete turn of events in what I was watching, and I watched Face Off, and then Universal Soldier.
Nice.
So watching those again was pretty interesting. Man, I forgot a lot of Face Off, so that was pretty fun to revisit. Um, and some of the ridiculousness, man. Let me tell you. We finished Schitt's Creek. Saw the last season of that. Also saw the last season of the show The Good Place, which was on Netflix. So finished like several shows. And then the last thing, which I actually wound up finishing last night, was Spaceballs.
Classic.
So that has been my past several weeks. Oh, and then the other thing to mention too, because I always kind of forget to mention this, is since we talk about gaming on here, I started playing finally because I was able to get enough space on my PC to download it. Middle Earth Shadow of War. The first game was fantastic, and I'm totally, thoroughly enjoying the second one. So
Rock.
that is my long list. What
Man.
have you got?
Uh,
Try to
I've been
top
watching
that.
been watching quite a bit of stuff. I've been watching a lot of stuff on Investigation Discovery.
Okay.
I watched this 2-season series called The 1980s, The Deadliest Decade. and it's kind of just like, recreations of these murders and stuff that happened in the 80s, and they give, like the story and everything. If you've seen an investigation discovery show, they're all pretty much the same. There's like reenactments and stuff with the narrator talking.
Mhm.
After I watched that, I moved on to 90s, The Deadliest Decade. I finished that one today. It's funny, one episode was the story that was used in the movie Pain and Gain with The Rock. Uh, and I didn't recognize it until probably like 10 minutes into the episode. They're like hour-long episodes. And I was like, gosh, that sounds familiar. And I started thinking about it. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's Pain and Gain. Because I knew that was based on a true story. We've also watched Hocus Pocus a couple times. It's one of my wife's favorites. I've watched Halloween twice. Once we watched it outside with our friends on the deck with the projector. So that was pretty cool. I've watched Nightmare on Elm Street twice. Watched Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2. I watched a documentary about Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2 called Scream Queen. It's about the actor who played the main character and just like his life and how his life was affected by that movie. Kind of a notorious movie because it's now considered like one of the gayest movies ever. And there's a lot of homosexual undertones
Okay.
with that movie. If we ever get around to watching the series, you'll see what I mean. Anybody who's seen it knows what I'm talking about, so I really won't get into it. But it was kind of interesting seeing that guy's life and how that movie almost like ruined his career
Hmm.
because it was the 80s, and being a out gay man in the 80s as an actor was almost like a death wish to your career.
Hmm.
But other than those, we started watching Schitt's Creek again just because we're running out of shows to watch because we've watched The Office like a million times. I think that's pretty much it. Oh, I watched that Adam Sandler Hubie Halloween movie, and I don't know how I feel about it. There were some things where I thought were pretty good, like the story and the scenery and all that stuff was kind of cool. It was very Halloween, but Adam Sandler does like a stupid voice the entire time, and like Shaq's cameo in it. I love Shaq. Shaq is like one of my favorite athletes and one of my favorite celebrities. I think he's hilarious, and I just like I appreciate him. I think he's a good guy, and he's a good role model for kids to look up to. But I don't know. He's a funny guy, and I can't figure out why he can't put it together in movies and stuff.
Hmm.
But his role in that was pretty dumb. If you ever watch it, you'll know what I mean. But that's pretty much all I've been watching. Quite a bit of stuff.
Nice. Talking about Shaq, you know
Sure.
about how they remade Shaq Fu?
Yeah.
I almost bought that last week.
Oh man.
It was on sale, and I was like, oh, and I was like, oh, but I just bought some other games, and I don't know if I would ever play it, and I don't know.
Just
Actually,
bought
I should go back and see if it's still on sale. It was pretty cheap, so on the Nintendo Switch, if anybody's wondering. So
nice. I've heard that one's not too bad.
yeah, it looked pretty good.
I mean, the original was pretty terrible, so
Yeah, it's funny because they make fun of the original.
yeah. And Shaq himself makes fun of it, so kind of
Yeah.
funny. So thinking of things that are funny or interesting, we can move on into Did You Know? So, did you know the weekly facts that will change your life? And Caleb, it is your turn. What do you got?
All right. So what we've got this week is maybe not funny, but fun and games and video game related.
Mhm.
And so, did you know that the man who founded Atari also started Chuck E. Cheese?
Was his name Charles Cheese?
No, not quite. It was in 1972. Nolan Bushnell started the gaming company Atari, and then that produced the classic arcade game Pong. And he sold the company after 4 years, and then the following year, so about 5 years later, he opened Chuck E. Cheese. And there was actually a game in Chuck E. Cheese that was called Ping, which was a knockoff of Pong.
Yikes.
So I don't know if he got hit with any, copyright things with that, but there's your did you know?
Cheesy. Cheesy indeed. Oh gosh. Yeah, Ping is a ripoff of Pong. Come on, man.
Hey, man. They
Oh,
should have called
gosh.
Pong Ping in the first place.
maybe that was his idea. He's like, we should name it Pig, and everybody's looked at him like he's an idiot. He's like, I'll show you.
Kids will agree with me.
Oh gosh. Yeah, so let's move on to the main topic.
Halloween night. A small American town. 15 years ago. Michael? Halloween.
I spent 8 years trying to reach him, and then another 7 trying to keep him locked up because I realized that what was living behind that boy's eyes was purely and simply evil. I think he'll come back.
Exploring uncharted territory.
Totally charted.
Just talk.
Sure. The only reason she babysits is to have
Halloween.
Come on out.
Halloween. The night he came home.
So, the main topic of the week is the 1978 horror movie Halloween, directed by John Carpenter. The plot is 15 years after murdering his sister on Halloween night, 1963, Michael Myers escapes from a mental hospital and returns to the small town of Haddonfield, Illinois to kill again. The cast is Jamie Lee Curtis as Laurie Strode, Donald Pleasance as Dr. Loomis, Nancy Keys as Annie, PJ Souls as Linda, and Nick Castle credited as The Shape. I know that I've seen this movie plenty of times. I can't even count how many times I've seen this movie. Like I said, I've watched it 2 times in like the last couple weeks. So, but I do know that this is the first time you've seen this movie.
Well, I was gonna say I don't know if I can count as high as the number of times I've seen this movie. So
Oh gosh. Yeah, I mean, it's a classic. I mean, just put it right out there. It's a classic. It's one of my favorite horror movies. It might be my favorite horror movie. I kind of go back and forth between this and Nightmare on Elm Street.
okay.
I mean, if it wasn't for Halloween, then my favorite subgenre of horror might not exist, and that's the slasher movie. Halloween wasn't the first, but it was the one that perfected the whole setup.
hmm
This movie was greatly influenced by the 1974 Canadian movie Black Christmas, which made like a little bit of noise when it came out, but it's been a little more appreciated in the years after. It's actually had 2 remakes. One I think was last year. I heard it was terrible. I didn't watch it. That one's pretty solid, and it's a movie that really makes you uneasy most of the time. John Carpenter saw that movie and he liked so many things about it that he decided to make his own, and that's how we got Halloween. Uh, one last thing I'll say about Black Christmas: um, it is directed by the same guy that made A Christmas Story. And if you watch Black Christmas, those 2 movies are pretty much polar opposites. Lots of obscene phone calls in Black Christmas, I'll say that.
All right.
But um, just a little general discussion about Halloween. The movie kind of starts out with what we find out is a flashback. We get some kind of interesting shots with POVs, lots of point of view shots, which is one of the things that John Carpenter kind of got from Black Christmas and became kind of a staple in the slasher genre. Shown a lot in Friday the 13th, especially.
hmm
Especially in the first Friday the 13th. Um, and we see the point of view put the mask on, go upstairs, and walks in on their sister. And the sister, calls the point of view by name of Michael, and he proceeds to stab her to death. Soon the parents come home and they see a young boy who was the point of view the whole time as Michael standing in front of the house with a bloody knife with but kind of a blank look on his face. And that's kind of how everything plans out. It's like a quick little backstory. Um, Kind of some interesting shots for such a low budget movie.
hmm
Very instrumental in the horror genre, I'd say. Um, yeah, I mean, from there we get on to we kind of meet like these girls. Oh, I guess before that, we get Dr. Loomis helping he's like coming to this psych ward where he's like Michael's doctor. He's like his psychiatrist. And there's like a breakout. Uh, he goes to try to find Michael and try to get help and everything. When he leaves, like the nurse that's like in the car, Michael kind of like scares her out of there. He takes the car, takes off, and now it's like Dr. Loomis is running after him. Crazy old Dr. Loomis. And now they find out, Dr. Loomis goes to Haddonfield, which is Michael's hometown, and he starts warning the authorities there, and that's when we meet like our main cast of quote unquote teenage girls. I'll get to that a little bit later. This is like the first feature movie of Jamie Lee Curtis's career. And I mean, even at being one of her first movies, she's pretty solid in it.
Yeah,
Like
she did
acting
pretty
is really good, and you can see like she emotes really well in it, and she comes off great as like kind of innocent but not naive and very smart and resourceful.
good. Hmm.
So
Yeah, she the one thing that I thought was not as high of quality as the other elements was some of the times when she was like moaning or crying.
yeah,
That audio, I was kind of like, eh. But I mean, come on, here, that's being nitpicky, but it did make me chuckle a little bit.
yeah, one of those things you look back on probably at the time like, oh my gosh, this is crazy kind of thing.
Oh yeah,
But
at the
now you look
time, I'm
back on it,
sure.
and you're like, eh.
Yeah, at the time, if I had watched this at the time, I know I would have not even thought of that. But one thing that I have to say too with Jamie Lee Curtis, and this is just like a personal thing with me, and so I don't mean it in any negative way, but I don't even know how young she was at this time. She never looks young to me.
No,
Does that make
she
sense?
doesn't. Yeah, that's funny because when we watched this with our friends, my wife's friend was like, she like Jamie Lee Curtis looks like she's like 30.
I know, right? I was just
And
like,
I was like, yeah, like, in these movies they always kind of do that, and I didn't think anything of it. But when I looked it up, like Jamie Lee Curtis, I think was like 18 or 19 when this movie was made.
yeah, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's something with her specific features or her. I don't know, but she just doesn't look like a teenager, even though she probably very well was. But I just always picture, and 30 is actually a really good target range where it's just like at least 30.
Yeah, and I kind of pointed out too when we watched it that, um, her both of her parents were actors.
Mm-hmm.
Janet Leigh, she was probably most known for being in Psycho, and her father Tony Curtis, like, so she grew up in Hollywood, so she might have had to grow up quicker than a lot of kids,
Mm-hmm.
and it might have been more of like a stressful and a little rougher, I guess.
Yeah, it's possible.
Especially Hollywood in the '60s. Growing up, that might have had some effect on it too. So maybe she looks a little bit older than she is, or because if you look at her now, like she still looks pretty good for her age. Like she hasn't like aged a lot. I mean, they kind of played her up to make her look older in the 2018 Halloween.
Mm. And I
Um,
have not seen that either.
yeah, I don't know if you saw like pictures or like anything like that from that, but yeah, she's 61 now.
Okay. Well, one thing as we're talking kind of like about the girls and the characters being introduced, I part of it was a little bit preconceived, but also the way that the movie was leading up and everything. I know that Lori was the final girl, as it's always said,
Mm,
but I thought she was going to be the main girl, if that makes sense. Like I thought Michael Myers was going to be obsessed with her. I mean, he made it seem that way. Like he followed her all the time. It was her that he was fixated on.
hmm
But then he did the whole, you know, uh, what am I trying to correlation between killing his sister and then killing was it Annie?
Yeah.
And so that part kind of confused me where I was just like, why is this about Annie when I thought Michael Myers got fixated on Lori?
See, the thing that I always thought is that he wasn't so much fixated on them as much as they were in the wrong place at the wrong time, basically. When he came into town, he was kind of like the first girls of that age group that he saw.
Uh-huh.
So then maybe like, because there's no explanation for any of this, which what makes this movie even more impactful, I guess, a little more creepy, is that he really doesn't have much of a motive to
Yeah.
be hunting these girls down and killing them. Like, he just, he's crazy. He goes back to his hometown, finds them, and for whatever reason finds the need to like take them out.
Yeah. I guess that makes sense thinking about it that way, because it very well could be that he used Annie because she was the first, available target.
Hmm.
So
And that's kind of how it worked out. And with Lori, she was more smart and cunning of the bunch,
mhm.
where Annie was kind of like the fun-loving friend, but at the same time, you could tell that she was pretty bright too. I mean, then there's Linda. Linda's kind of like the bubbly party girl, kind of airhead.
Yeah, I was gonna say Arad.
Totally. That's another thing too. I'll mention is the dialogue in this movie. So that's pretty funny. I'll get kind of to that a little bit later because I got like one of my favorite lines from the movie just because of how ridiculously stupid it is. Um, it is to mention too, like this was one of John Carpenter's first movies, and it was shot for like a super low budget. And I'll give that in the facts because I got lots of facts for this. But kind of back to the story, how you mentioned Michael's kind of just following them around, and we get a lot of like really iconic scenes. Um, Michael kind of standing on the other side of the hedge, and Lori looks up and sees him,
Hmm.
and then she looks back and he's gone. Um, we get a lot of those with Michael
Yeah, the
standing by the
laundry.
car. Yep, that one is one of the most iconic shots from this movie. Also, Michael standing by the car watching her while she's in class. And, it makes me laugh how unnoticed Michael goes in this movie by other people. Like, I guess he's like just, in this one, he's just kind of the average size guy. But he's also wearing like a mechanic's jumpsuit and a bright white mask.
Hmm.
I mean, granted, it is Halloween, but still, he's still gonna catch your eye. And he's driving a car that says like, or not penitentiary, state sanitarium or something like that on it.
Yeah.
I'm gonna see that and be like, oh, somebody's out of the loony bin.
Oh, it's just part of his costume,
Oh yeah. And I love the line that Dr. Loomis has with the guy where it's like, he stole the car. It's like, well, how does he know how to drive? And he's like, the guy says to him, he's like, well, he shouldn't know how to drive. He's been here his whole life. And Dr. Loomis says, well, he did pretty well last night. Maybe somebody around here is giving him lessons.
I thought that was very good.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Dr. Loomis, he isn't in the movie all that much, but like, he's in like a lot of scenes, but not for a long amount of time.
Hmm.
But
He,
every single line he speaks has like meaning to the plot, I guess.
yeah. I think that having his character was really solid for this movie. I
Hmm.
think it could have done all right if essentially like he was at the beginning and Michael escaped and that was it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I did not know much of anything going into this
Hmm.
other than Michael killed some people when he was young, and then was still a killer when he got older. And Lori, Jamie Lee Curtis's character, was the final girl because I knew
Yeah.
that she survived past that. That's like all I knew. I heard of the character Dr. Loomis, so I didn't know how big of a role that he was going to have. But yeah, he did have a key role. And yeah, there were some cheesy parts and everything, but he played the role well. And I do think that he helped. Well, the way that his parts were interjected throughout the movie really helped with the progression.
Hmm.
because and I think this is where we talked with the Friday the 13th, some of the Friday the 13th movies where they got slow.
Yeah.
And there were some slow parts with Halloween, but also at the same time, you just like never knew when Michael was gonna actually finally kill somebody. But Dr. Loomis, you know, he had those elements of, oh, it's the normal life of a teenage girl, and then there's somebody lurking in the background, and then you add the fresh element of Dr. Loomis in there, adding to the story and gives a little bit of development and moves things forward. So I thought it was really well done and put together, and was happy that character was in there.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, he's out there just hitting home runs with every line.
Yeah.
Like I said, that character is a good way to like give some backstory and explain what's going on without being annoying about it. And I kind of harken back to Freddy versus Jason, where they're sitting around the table and that guy's like, "What if Freddy is using Jason to that stupid part where he's like, put fear back at everybody?" Where it's believable that Dr. Loomis knows Michael's kind of motive.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I believe he's going back to Haddonfield. He calls the police. Police don't believe him. He's on his way there. He stumbles across that wrecked car and sees that, Michael has killed the guy, and um, he's still driving the psych ward state car.
Mm-hmm.
And now he's like on the hunt for him, and he's working with Sheriff Brackett, who's Annie's dad, to try to find Michael before like he hurts anybody.
Yeah.
Because Dr. Loomis says how when he met Michael, he was like an 8-year-old boy, and he kind of looked normal on the outside, but if you looked into his eyes, he could I'm just kind of summarizing. You looked into his eyes and you could see pure evil.
Yeah.
And just like there was nothing there. He's just kind of like a shell. So he knows what Michael is capable of, where he's trying to tell the sheriff how serious of a situation it is.
Yeah.
And speaking of Sheriff Brackett, how bad of a cop is that guy? Like, his daughter pulls up in a car, and like her and Lori are smoking weed, and then like he goes up to him and starts talking to him in the car, and he can't smell it.
Yeah. Well, then on top of that too, like, how dumb was Annie? Because it's just like, why do you need to? You see your dad from like a block away, and you're like, oh crap, don't drive up to your dad.
Right. Or if you do, just honk the horn or something and wave.
I mean, I guess she was high, so.
That's true. Yeah, another thing too that with the sheriff is, after he talks to Annie and Lori and they drive off, and then Dr. Loomis comes up and he's talking to him, you see Michael drive by in the background of the car, and nobody sees it, and it's, you get the feeling that Haddonfield isn't a very big town.
Yeah.
And you got this station wagon driving around with this big decal on the side saying where it's from, and it's a dude wearing a white mask.
But it's Halloween, and anybody can do whatever they want,
I guess.
Yeah.
And then from there, I guess, we go on and we get kind of like the bulk of the story where Lori's babysitting, just talking to other friends because they want to meet up and party, but Lori, she's kind of I don't know, not so much like the good girl, but the responsible one. Where she knows like she has the job of watching Tommy Doyle, and he's like trying to ditch Lindsay, who she's watching is the girl next, like across the street, so she can go meet up with her boyfriend. And so Lori kind of gets stuck watching the two kids, and that's kind of when Michael comes to the neighborhood and starts like picking them off one by one, and it ends up with the quote unquote discovery moment we get later, a little later on, I guess, because Annie's kind of the first one to go. Uh, I guess I can get into like the kills and stuff, meaning kind of like what we did with Friday the 13th. But this movie is kind of known now for being rather bloodless,
Yeah.
and
It was
re-
really just the opening scene.
yeah, really, that's like kind of the only blood. And then you see a little bit of blood on the guy that was in that car that Michael takes over.
Oh yeah.
So we get Judith Myers, which is Michael's sister. She gets stabbed to death. And then we get the mechanic. I'm reading online that said he was shot. So I guess if you look close enough, then he does have bullet holes on him, which I guess I
Right.
never really paid too close attention to that. That mechanic that
And where'd the gun go?
Exactly. When the sheriff and Dr. Loomis go to the empty Myers home, they find a dog
Mm-hmm.
that was apparently eaten. And the first couple times I watched that movie, like as a kid, I never really picked up on that. I never paid attention to it. So technically, Michael kills 2 dogs.
Oh yeah.
Because
I
he
guess
also
does.
kills Lindsay's dog by bear hugging it or strangling it or something.
Yeah.
Annie gets like attacked in her car. She gets like choked for a while, and then Michael slits her throat, which is funny because there's absolutely no blood.
Hmm.
And then Linda's boyfriend Bob. That's probably the most iconic kill in the movie. I guess maybe like Judith's at the beginning is probably the most remembered, but Bob's where him and Linda have sex, and then he goes downstairs to like get them beer, and he sees that like the side door is open. So he starts calling because he thinks Annie's there or maybe like Lindsay's back, and he's getting no answer. And he goes to open like this other door, and Michael grabs him by the throat. He chokes him and like lifts him off the ground with one arm, and then he stabs him with a butcher knife, and it sticks into like this cabinet, and it leaves like Bob hanging on the wall.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when you get like the iconic moment of Michael kind of just looking at him and tilting his head, like trying to study what's going on. And you kind of get the little idea there that, you know, Michael going into the sanitarium at such a young age that maybe he doesn't fully understand everything.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe he doesn't have like a fully developed mind, and he's a little more cerebral than Jason Voorhees is, but I guess that's kind of a thing they have in common.
Yeah.
And then the last kill is Linda. She gets strangled with the telephone cord while she's calling Lori, and Lori just thinks it's sounds of passion. Um, yeah, and I mean, really, that's the last death because, spoiler alert, Michael doesn't die.
Yeah. So how many kills was that? Not
There's
including
7.
the dogs?
Oh, not including the dogs, there's 5.
Yeah. I mean that honestly I mean, of course, this is like early on in the genre and everything. That seems like a really low number.
Yeah, I mean, you get farther in the series and you start reaching the 20s, just like Friday the 13th. Um, yeah, I'd say probably the most memorable one out of that bunch is Bob getting pinned to the door with a knife.
Yeah, which is pretty much impossible, but
Yeah.
I'm not going to be that nitpicky guy, but when I saw that, I honestly thought that because you could also kind of tell where his shoulders were pinned up or something.
Yeah.
And I was just like, yeah, he would totally slump over and fall off of that if he was on that. But I mean, it's cool. I'm not like dog because I also like the over the top action movies, which I'm totally fine with. So, but that That did pop into my mind, I had to admit.
Oh yeah. Um, man, I guess I just talked about the discovery scene that kind of became like a cliche in the slasher genre, where Laurie goes into Annie's house and she's trying to find Annie, trying to find Bob or Linda, and she goes into a room and she sees Annie kind of spread out on the bed with Judith's headstone, which Michael. That's a scene I forgot to mention earlier, where Dr. Loomis and like the caretaker of the cemetery noticed that Judith's headstone was taken.
Yeah, which is no easy task.
Yeah, I always mention that every time I watch. I'm like, that thing had to weigh probably a few 100 pounds, don't you think?
Oh yeah, that had to be
Solid granite.
ridiculous. Yeah.
And like Michael carried that.
I mean,
we kinda,
how many cinder blocks do you think that would be? Like even size wise? Like
10?
6 probably, at least
And
6.
weight probably like 10.
Yeah, and I was just saying even from like volume size. So could you imagine lifting anywhere between 6 and 10 cinder blocks by yourself?
Right. But I mean, at the same time, he lifted Bob up by his neck, and Bob probably weighed like 180 pounds,
Yeah, true.
right around there. So I guess, Michael might have some kind of superhuman strength, crazy strength. Uh, and that's, she kind of does like the cliche thing, she sees that, she screams, stumbles backwards, bumps into a closet, and then, Bob comes swinging down from the closet. She stumbles back, hits a cabinet, and the cabinet opens up, and Linda's body's in there, which that always cracks me up in slasher movies. Like, did the killer just like rig up these people? So, okay, if she lightly bumps this, like he's gonna come swinging down, and if she lightly taps the cabinet, that's gonna pop open.
Yeah, Bob's was a little bit ridiculous since he came swinging down. It's just like what did he tied him to the ceiling or what is that?
Right. You want to talk about ridiculous? How about how Linda dies? Where Michael, after he stabs Bob, he goes upstairs, and for whatever reason,
Thank you
Michael's
for
got like
mentioning this.
a
Thank you.
sheet over him with Bob's glasses. I mean, it's kind of that's another kind of like iconic scene in the movie, a memorable shot of Michael standing there. But at the same time, you just gotta wonder why.
Yes, thank you.
Michael's like, I'm gonna put this sheet on me, and then I'm gonna put this guy's glasses over top of it, and I'm gonna stand there.
Yeah. Well, then like it's kind of, I mean, and it makes you question why he does some things, which that was part of it. Why is he in the sheet? Like everything else has not really been thought out at all. Like he was just waiting for an opportunity and then he took the opportunity. There was no
Hmm.
planning. And
Yeah, it's
yet,
almost like an instinctual thing, Like all of a sudden, that's just like his natural instinct is just to jump out and grab the person and kill him.
yeah,
Where
but
this
then
one takes a little more thought.
exactly. Exactly. And then part of the thing too that was a little interesting to me was, and I was kind of on the side of Loomis where it was more so I imagined that Michael was going to take the gravestone then and kind of um recreate the death of his sister,
Hmm.
and the headstone would be in the house in her room. But then he took it to just the random place and in a room. But she was in the bedroom like the sister was. So there were a couple of things, but that wasn't too big of it. But the sheet thing was probably the most confusing.
Yeah.
So there was, I thought there were, well, then it kind of comes into question too about the mask. I mean,
Hmm.
I think it was a good part that they had it where when he was a kid, he put a mask on,
Yeah.
but there wasn't really a need for it. I mean, maybe it was his mask, but then why did he feel like he needed a mask for this? Like, if they're trying to play on the idea that he hasn't really developed a whole lot since when he was a kid, why would there be the need and the thought process in his mind to get a mask?
Yeah, and I guess that's kind of some of the mystery to the character too, which is something that I really enjoy with the first movie. A lot of movies that I can think of that don't explain a lot are some of the best, like Night of the Living Dead, for example. They never explain how or why the dead are like rising from the grave and killing people.
Hmm.
And I think, you know, that's kind of adds to the mystery and some of the suspense and like the creep factor with it is that why does Michael do what he does? Like, why does he find it necessary to get a mask and put it on?
Yeah. Well, then again, at the same time, like there's some thought process through there because he doesn't just go up to somebody and kill them. He
Right.
waits and
Hmm. He's
he doesn't really,
selective.
yeah, it's selective. So yeah, but then also too, the question coming in with the mask is then when the mask comes off, was he disfigured?
Um, you talking about because of his eye?
Yeah.
I think, well, because before that, Lori, we're getting a little ahead of ourselves, but um, where Lori, like, during that final chase, she stabs him in the eye with that wire hanger.
Okay, that was before. Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Because, once he starts chasing her, one of my, probably like my favorite shot in all of horror movies happens in this movie where, she discovers their bodies and she runs out of the room and she's standing up against the door case
Mm-hmm.
and there's just like a black room behind her and then like super like slowly you can see Michael's mask just like appear in the background behind her.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's something that's super subtle and no other movie has ever really done anything like that. Even in, Halloween 2018, that had a lot of winks and nods to the original, didn't recreate anything like that. And I talked about it with the group that I went to see that movie with. That's probably the one of the scenes that really sticks out to me in this movie, and it's just the effectiveness of it and the
Mm-hmm.
uneasiness that it gives you. Because he kind of I guess, slowly shows up in the background, and then he just lunges at her with a knife and cuts her arm and rips the sleeve of her shirt, and that kind of begins like the chase.
Yeah, because most of the time in those situations, they either have the character just lunge out right away, like not a
Hmm.
slow reveal, or it's something different where it's like outside of a window, which has a completely different effect than somebody like right in the dark right next to you.
Yeah, and I guess with like the newest Halloween, there's a scene where Michael just kind of somebody opens the door and boom, he's standing there, and those are good for jump scares, but I feel like the him slowly appearing behind Laurie in the shadows is way more effective.
Yeah.
That begins the chase, and she runs back to the Doyle house where Tommy and Lindsay are sleeping. And there's a scene too where she runs to like the neighbor's house and she's screaming for help, frantically pounding on the door. And somebody looks at her in the window, and then they turn the light off.
Yeah. Well,
But
they
I'm thinking about it too, because like if I see somebody running around like a maniac screaming like that, help, then I'm gonna be like, I don't want anything to do with that person.
yeah. I've often thought that too on just kind of like what would you do? Like there would be a difference too. Like if I was living on my own and somebody came running up, I would approach it completely different where it'd be like, okay, I only have to worry about myself.
Hmm.
This person comes in here and winds up like trying something, I can defend myself. But then thinking about, we're both parents and everything, if I try to help somebody and bring somebody into my house, then I don't have to just worry about them. I have to worry about everybody else inside my house.
Right.
But in a situation like that too, which I mean, maybe they did, but from all evidence, it appears that they didn't. It's just like, call the police.
Yeah. That, and it's a small town. And
Mhm.
like Lori's dad is a realtor in this small town. So the odds that most people would probably know her.
Yeah.
So, if you saw somebody you knew running up like that, then yeah, you're going to open the door and help them. But that just cracks me up. That person like looks at her in the window and is like, yeah, no.
How about no?
And then she runs across the street to the Doyle house and she's pounding on the door because she forgot the keys. And
Yeah.
that's just about right. She dropped them somewhere in the whole craziness with Michael.
Well, even
Tommy,
if she had the keys, I'd be surprised if she could fish them out of those like super tight pockets.
right? Maybe that was the issue. God, I can't reach the keys. Yeah, so she gets the door up. Tommy opens the door for her and runs in, and she's like warning the kids, get out of here, go upstairs and hide or whatever. And then she looks over and notices that the window was open the whole time,
Mm-hmm.
and like she can hear Michael but doesn't know where he's at. So she like sinks down in front of the couch. Michael jumps out and he stabs the cushion on the couch next to her. And then she grabs a knitting needle and jams it into his neck. He falls down and she thinks he's dead, so she runs upstairs to the kids and she's telling him, I want you to run to the neighbor's house, call the cops. And, Michael starts walking up the stairs behind her and the kids freak out and she runs in the room and tells him, like, go in here and lock the door. And, thinking ahead and planning things like this is smart, it's smart and dumb at the same time. Because she runs in this one room, opens up the doors to like the balcony to make it look like she went out the window, and then she goes into the closet and like locks herself in there. So basically, she plays this trick, which is smart, but then at the same time it's dumb because she corners herself.
Yeah. It's a risk you gotta take, man.
And she hides, tries to stay quiet. Michael like instantly finds where she's at. Another iconic moment. He starts breaking through the closet after she grabs a wire hanger, like I said, and stabs him in the eye. He drops the knife. She grabs the knife, stabs him in the chest.
Well, hold on. He starts breaking through after way too long of trying to shake the doors open.
He's like, it's locked? Wait, is it locked? Is this thing just jammed? Wait, is it locked?
I don't know how to break it open into these flimsy doors.
Oh yeah, they're just like how would you? They almost look like they're blinds.
Yeah, they're
like slats.
Crap, what's that? It's almost like that modeling wood or balsa wood. Yeah, balsa wood. I'm just like, dude, my 5-year-old could break through that.
Yeah, and he just starts plowing through it, and then she stabs him in the eye, then stabs him with the knife. He falls down, and she goes and gets the kids out of that room, and then she tells them again, run to the neighbor's house, call the cops. And then I wondered tonight, and I never really thought about this, why doesn't she just go with them? There's no reason why she has to stay there.
Mm-hmm.
She should be like, let's go.
Yeah.
And then, Michael's presumed dead, and she's like sitting down outside the door, and she's like just losing it, crying. And then you can see like unfocused in the background, Michael just sits up straight and turns his head and looks at her. And that was actually taken by The Undertaker, the wrestler. He would do that in his matches where he would just sit up straight like that and then turn and look at the guy he's wrestling when you think he's down. That's another kind of cool moment because then he starts walking up behind her again. And he starts choking her. She actually takes his mask off, and that's when we get to see his face a little bit. And then Dr. Loomis comes out of nowhere and because he sees the kids running out of the house, and then he fires 6 shots into Michael. pretty much having no effect on him. And then he flies off the balcony and lands in the yard. And he's like all sprawled out there. Dr. Loomis goes and checks on Laurie. He comes back, looks out in the yard, and Michael's gone.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how the movie ends. And we get like, you can see kind of like POV shots of some things like that have happened, and you can hear Michael breathing in the background, and then the movie ends.
Yeah.
Awesome ending, awesome cliffhanger ending.
Yeah. Unlike Friday the 13th.
Yep, Carpenter knew how to end that movie.
Yeah.
But I noticed something weird tonight. So, do you remember when Michael goes and he jumps over the couch and stabs into the couch with a knife, and Laurie stabs him in the neck with the knitting needle?
Oh, yeah. I know what you're gonna say.
Michael drops the knife, right?
Yeah.
And then she runs off. He comes after her. He doesn't have the knife initially until he starts busting through that closet, and now he's got it.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the movie, where they're showing Michael breathing and showing like all the different spots in the house, the knife is still laying next to the couch.
Yeah.
So where did that other knife come from?
No, he just had an arsenal of knives, and
He's like, oh no, this one's yucky now. It's another one from the kitchen.
he's like, I can't stab more than one person with one knife.
Yeah. It's like, I want to kill him. I don't want to, give him hepatitis. Oh gosh. Yeah, I guess we can start talking about kind of interesting things or like favorite parts in the movie.
Well, we have not talked about one of the, for me, not having seen this movie before, actually the most iconic thing about this movie.
Mm.
The music.
I was gonna say I consider that the greatest horror like theme ever.
I would.
It's amazing.
I mean, I'm not as immersed into the genre as you are, but I would probably have to agree, at least from what I've seen, because as soon as I forgot that was the theme music, and as soon as it was started, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so awesome, because it's always been out of context for me. Everybody's used it in like, highlight things or to dub over some like dumb little YouTube video that they put together. So I've never seen it in context. And so I was just like, this is setting the mood so well.
Yeah, and the opening scene there with the the name Halloween and the jack-o'-lantern.
Yeah.
And just like zooming in on it or whatever, and that theme playing, it's just like it fits perfectly.
Oh yeah, so simple.
I said it's like the greatest horror theme ever. It's either that or the Jaws theme.
Yeah.
Like those are like the two greatest horror themes ever.
Mm-hmm. Now, in general, overall with this, like just some general thoughts. Again, I have not seen a wide variety and everything, but this is almost what I feel like exactly what was in my mind of the idea of horror movies.
Yeah.
Like, not some of the other things I've seen where it's like crazy over the top, they're either trying to like sexualize it way too much, or they're going over the top with gore and all this stuff. This Halloween is what I have always kind of thought of, defaulted to in my mind as horror movie. Like when you want to get together with your friends for Halloween and watch some scary movies and enjoy some stuff, this like epitomized that for me. And I thought it was so well done. Like I appreciated it. As I said, there are a lot of the movies that you've watched that you would enjoy that I know I wouldn't feel the same about. But this one I just thought was great. I mean, as I mentioned, the progression throughout the whole thing was really well done. The characters were well developed. The acting was good, and it kept you engaged. And I think, as I mentioned already, that a huge part of that was interjecting Dr. Loomis throughout, where you don't get one stupid scene where they try to explain everything, where they build up throughout it and then they have a good climax. Now, having brought up the music, one thing that I want to make sure to mention before I forget it, even though I have it written down here somewhere, is the one weird thing that stuck out to me was essentially the climax, the final hunt of Lori. The music and the sound effects didn't really mesh for me. Like, it was really kind of quiet and a little bit kind of awkward.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's ever come across that way to you. Maybe I was analyzing it a little bit too much, but it just felt like there should have been maybe a little bit more going on as far as, you know, special sound, not sounds of like fighting or stabbing or slashing or anything like that, but just, you know, the extra like sound bites that help express a little bit more of the intensity and everything. They would have it kind of in between, but then all of a sudden when the action is happening, I almost feel like there were some parts where they had no music.
Yeah, and I think maybe sometimes um, that was like a creative choice to make
Mhm.
it feel a little more realistic
Yeah, and it
and a
very
little
well
more
may have been.
visceral, I guess.
Yeah. But for me, it was a little bit unusual. And I wouldn't say it was like detrimental or anything to it, but I was like getting built up. And then all of a sudden they were doing that. And I was kind of, I don't know, I felt part of it reminded me of some of those, because we've seen some of those cheaper production, you know, fighting movies
Hmm.
where there's just action, but there's nothing like supporting it. There's no like background sounds or music or something to help generate a atmosphere.
Yeah, like
So
Miami Connection.
yeah, yep. I was actually thinking of the Rambo. So
Oh yeah. Oh man, Rambo. Oh gosh. Um, so one thing in this movie that always sticks out to me is, you know, there's that scene where Tommy's at school and those boys are telling him the boogeyman's gonna get him. He's carrying that huge pumpkin and then he trips and falls on it. How weak is that pumpkin?
yeah,
That pumpkin's huge, and it's like this little boy falls on it, and the little boy weighs like probably what, 50 pounds? And the thing just like crumples under him.
yeah. Maybe it was an old pumpkin or something.
Maybe. Um, I mentioned in this some of the dialogue is so bad that it's good. Here is my favorite line from this. There's the scene towards the beginning where Lori, Linda, and Annie are walking, and Lori stops, and they're like, "What's wrong?" And she's like, "I forgot my chemistry book." And then Linda says, "Who cares? I always forget my chemistry book, my math book, and my English book. Let's see, and my French book. And who needs books anyway? I don't need books. I always forget all my books. I mean, it doesn't really matter if you have your books or not." It's like you really don't notice that the first time you watch it because you're paying attention more to what's going on. And at that time, Michael drives by in the car, or like, Michael's watching them, so you're paying attention more to Laurie's reaction to it than
Hmm.
what Linda's actually saying. Uh,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
don't know.
that
I don't
was
know if you noticed that one.
I did kind of a little bit, but at the same time, I was just like, you know, that sounds like what some teenage girls would talk and act like.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, that's basically like what Tarantino does with his dialogue. It's a regular everyday stuff
Hmm.
that really doesn't matter. I think about Pulp Fiction and the conversation about the Royale with cheese. Like that's
Yeah.
just an everyday conversation that someone would have. Uh, we mentioned Jamie Lee Curtis did a great job in this, and Donald Pleasance. Uh, Donald Pleasance, like he was the biggest name actor in this. I mean, Jamie Lee Curtis was known just because her parents were famous, but really the only like household name was Donald Pleasance
Hmm.
in this, and he was great, like we said.
Yeah.
Was there any other interesting things that stood out to you?
Um, Man, well, as I already, I kind of threw a lot of it out there right there at the beginning, like music, progression. This really epitomizes what I've always thought of a horror movie.
Hmm.
Um, really great job with the acting. I mean, yeah, I could sit here and nitpick some things. I've mentioned a couple things that kind of stood out to me that I thought were a little bit odd or interesting. Um, it, I think I was a little bit more prepared for this from having watched all the Friday the 13th movies, where a lot of times when I've thought of horror and slasher movies, I usually kind of default to the stereotypical let's kill as many people as we can.
Hmm.
And so I probably would have anticipated that Michael would have one, killed more people, but then two, done it throughout essentially kind of the entirety of the movie.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, it is interesting, and I totally agree with you. Like how the more questions they left there actually kind of worked out well because it makes you think more about it. Because the more we discuss it and the more I think about it, the more intrigued I get about, okay, why didn't he kill the nurse? You know, um, why did he kill the mechanic?
Hmm.
And all these kind of little things, which, maybe they didn't even take 5 seconds to specifically think about, but because of the little intricate things they've done through it, it does raise some of those questions. So, yeah, I thought it was really good.
Yeah. Well, I can get on into trivia because I got quite a bit of things because there's a lot of interesting things with this movie.
Yeah.
We mentioned that the music is really good in this. Well, due to like budgetary stuff, John Carpenter composed the movie himself, and he did it in 4 days.
That's crazy.
He composed that entire like the score for the entire movie in 4 days. The budget was $300,000, and it made 47 million.
That's crazy.
It was the most profitable independent movie of all time until Blair Witch Project came out in like 1999,
Hmm.
which surpassed it. So, half of that budget was spent on Panavision cameras so it could be shot in the format it's shot in. And Donald Pleasance was paid $20,000 for 5 days of work. That's why I mentioned, he's in a lot of scenes, but not for very long. And that's some
Yeah.
of the reason why they had to hurry up and shoot his scenes. Um, so, Donald Pleasance actually, like when he met with John Carpenter about doing this movie, he said, I don't know why I'm in this movie, and I don't know who my character is. The only reason I'm doing this movie is because I have alimony to pay, and my daughter is in England in this rock and roll group, and she said that the music you did for Assault on Precinct 13 is cool.
What?
Yeah, that was Carpenter's like first movie was Assault on Precinct 13. It came out 2 years before Halloween. And like he got the call to do this, and his daughter's like, "Oh, you should do it." Like the music he did in that movie was like pretty cool.
What in the world?
Yeah, isn't it hilarious?
Yeah.
So I mentioned earlier that Jamie Lee Curtis was like 18, 19 or something like that when this movie was shot. She's the only teenager
Really?
in the movie. Yep.
Oh,
Like of the teenage girls, she's like the only one who's a teenager.
wow. And she
Um,
looked the oldest.
right? So this is kind of a well-known thing, but maybe you really don't know it. So the mask that was used was a William Shatner mask, like Michael's mask,
Hmm.
and they took the eyebrows and the sideburns off it. They opened the eyes farther and then painted it white and spray painted the hair brown.
Yeah, I had heard that one.
Yeah. And that was, another thing with the budget. They didn't have very much money, so they just got something they could get at the store, made it
Hmm.
work. Uh, so kind of funny, like does this movie really give you the feeling of fall
Yeah.
in like the autumn time? It was shot in the early spring in Southern California, and it was supposed to be in Illinois.
Yeah.
So,
Nice.
since it was shot in the spring, they had to use paper leaves that were painted brown. And after each shot, everybody had to go around and pick up the leaves and then move them to the next location. And you could see in the background in a few shots, I noticed this time because I knew like to look for them. There's palm trees.
Nice. I did not notice that.
And since it was early spring, pumpkins were really like extremely difficult to find.
Oh, so that's probably why I was so weak.
That's what I was thinking. So the POV sequence at the beginning took 2 days to shoot. The hand holding the knife was John Carpenter's girlfriend at the time, Deborah Hill, who was one of the producers.
Huh.
And the last thing goes to the dialogue, and I kind of joked about it earlier. Linda says totally 11 times in the movie. She drops 6 of them within like the first 10 minutes of the movie.
Nice.
So let's get on into the grades. So, what do you think the Rotten Tomatoes score is for this? There's a critic and an audience.
Okay, this will be interesting.
I'll give you a hint. I
Okay.
think it might be the highest rated movie we have ever done on the show
Oh crap. Okay.
for Rotten Tomatoes.
73.
The critic score is 96.
What?
I think that's higher than Star Wars.
Wow.
You were closer with the audience. What do you think the audience score is?
Well, if it's that high, I don't know. Give me 81.
89.
Wow.
Yeah, pretty favorable. I was kind of surprised with that because I think it's a great movie, and I think it pioneered so many things.
Mm-hmm.
But to be rated that high was kind of surprising. So IMDb, what do you got for that?
I kind of got spoiled for me.
Yeah, it's a 7.8.
Yeah.
It's kind of held steady at that for a few years now. Because I remember looking up like what's the highest rated slasher movie in IMDb. And unless you call Psycho a slasher movie, which I mean it kind of is. I think Halloween's the highest.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess Psycho's an 8.5.
Okay.
So our grades, what do you give this out of 5?
Well, as I said, this really I thought was fantastic. It did a great job. Like just in a movie in general, there was good progression. It kept your attention. And as I do my grades, I usually I like to remind people that I do it from a standpoint of if it's going to be a 5 out of 5, I'm saying essentially everybody would enjoy watching this movie.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, since this is kind of a specific genre and I know that this is not exactly everybody's interest, I'm probably going to go ahead and give it a 4.5 out of 5 rock.
Nice.
So because I mean I rated some Friday the 13th movies relatively high. I'm not sure. I think one of them got 4.5, but I know some got as far as 4 out of 5, and I know this is above those.
Oh yeah, easily.
Yeah,
Just even from like a technical standpoint
mm-hmm.
and how it's shot, and how things are handled, how the music is, and all that. I mean, Friday the 13th had great music too.
Yeah,
but like I said, the theme for this is like, I think the greatest horror theme of all time.
Yeah. So I was easily and comfortable with giving it a 4.5.
Nice. My grading scale is a little bit different, and I mean, it's really no surprise. I'm giving it a 5 out of 5.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's one of the greatest movies of all time. Not even just like horror movies. Um, I think especially based on the budget being so small, what it did to like the film industry,
Yeah.
and everything together with it. The acting is pretty good. There really isn't any like bad actors in it.
Yeah. There's
There
nothing.
there's kind of like some ditzy characters, like Linda, but like
Mm-hmm.
PJ Souls did a good job of playing that character.
Yeah.
It made a star out of Jamie Lee Curtis, Donald Pleasance, that just gave him that like iconic role. Moving even farther from what he already did prior to that, and I mean, he shows up in Halloween 2, 4, 5, and 6 after this. So, he's almost a big of a face of Halloween as Michael is himself. The character of Michael Myers has kind of gone on to be like this one of the most recognizable characters in movies.
Mm-hmm.
Right up there with Jason and Freddy Krueger and um, even characters like Darth Vader. There's not very many people that'll see him and not know at least where he's from. Uh, just you know, just the iconic scenes of like I said, Michael slowly appearing in the background behind Laurie, Michael sticking Bob to the wall with a knife and kind of tilting his head and looking at him, and all the things that it brought to the slasher genre that would blow up in the 80s, um, of a killer escaping from a insane asylum. And dude, I can't even tell you how many slasher movies I saw that ripped that off. I always joke when I watch those of like, oh, of course, this town has an insane asylum. They all had them in the 80s. uh, the POV shots that, he took. Carpenter openly like says he took those from Bob Clark's Black Christmas, but I feel like he perfected them in Halloween.
Yeah.
I feel like it's faithful enough to the movies that inspired Halloween, at the same time like inspired so many other movies, including the entire Friday the 13th franchise, which like that's why I felt like we had to watch Halloween after watching all those. So you kind of see where everything came from.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, and another time I guess we might have to get to the rest of the series so you can see kind of where it went. I guess you've seen Halloween and you've seen Halloween 3, and do you see any connection in those movies?
Oh, so many similarities. So
Yeah, that's kind of the reason why Halloween 3 didn't do so well, but it's kind of getting some recognition now.
that's funny because I didn't even think about it when you said, "Oh, Loomis made appearances in 1, 2, 4, 5, and 6." And I was like, "Oh, he wasn't in 3." And I totally did not connect the dots on that one.
Yep, we got Killer Mask instead. And a drunk doctor.
You know what I'd love though? I just find it so funny because I feel like I come across the people as such a movie buff because of what you told me, and I've known this for some time now. I mean, well over a year, but how the Halloween series originally was supposed to be a new story for every movie, but they just because the first one was so successful, they decided to do 2 with Michael Myers, and then they started doing new ones with the third one, and it tanked, so they went back to just doing Michael Myers. When I tell people that, I feel like they think I'm just overflowing with all this movie knowledge.
Yeah, it's kind of one of those interesting things that not a lot of people know. Just like I feel like a lot of people don't know that Jason's not the killer in the first Friday the 13th movie, and he doesn't get his mask until the third one.
Yeah,
A lot of people don't know that.
Mm-hmm.
Just one of those.
I didn't. Oh well, no. I remember us talking about it. And I first remember something coming up about he wasn't the killer in the first one, and then later on in some of our discussions before I even watched the movies. Actually, I think it was maybe when we started playing the game, and there was the one Jason that had the bag on his head.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yep. Yeah, the series kind of went on an interesting journey all the way up into, and this is like the only series I can think of where they've had 3 different strings of sequels. Where, they kind of reset the whole thing with Halloween H2O, and then Resurrection was a direct sequel to that, and then they made 2018 Halloween, which was a direct sequel to this one.
interesting.
Plus what they had with, so I guess 3 lines of sequels, because Halloween 2, 4, and 5, and 6 are all direct sequels. So yeah, which I can get into one of those sequels when we get to suggestions.
Thank you.
So yeah. My suggestion is 1981's Halloween 2. I feel like I had to suggest it with this movie because it is one of the only sequels I can think of that picks up directly after the first one. So at the end of Halloween, Dr. Loomis looks out in the yard and Michael's gone. Halloween 2, Dr. Loomis runs downstairs and he's looking around in the yard and he can't find Michael, and then that's how the movie starts.
Yeah.
And it just continues on with that. The rest of that night, Michael tries to hunt down Laurie, and he shows up at the hospital that she's in. And
don't ruin it, man.
I'm just saying, that's how that movie goes. I won't give anything.
So wait, hold on.
They get more backstory with Michael too in that one.
So they didn't need to have a campfire and tell a scary story and recap the whole, first movie.
Well, there is a short recap. I think of I think they show the last maybe 2 minutes of what happens, where Michael's choking Laurie, and then Dr. Loomis shoots Michael and he falls out the window, kind of thing. So there's a small recap, but basically you could edit these 2 movies together and it would be one long movie. It's pretty cool. The first time I saw Halloween 2, I was like, oh, this is cool, because I didn't expect it to be directly after. And it's pretty seamless. The tone is a little bit different, I guess. It's a lot more brutal, and there's more kills and there's more gore in this one. But I mean, it was kind of a sign of the times, because by that point, Friday the 13th is already out, The Burning was already out, and those are kind of mean-spirited and gory movies. So Halloween kind of pandered a little bit more to that.
I thought horror movies were always supposed to be happy movies.
Until you have to wear a mask and watch a flashing pumpkin and snakes and bugs come out of your face.
4 more days till Halloween. Halloween.
Oh gosh. So, do you want to get into the quote face-off?
Yes, let's go on to that.
Let's rock it. So, each episode we do the quote face-off, but you know what? This is going to be the last one. We decided we're going to discontinue after this one.
No.
We kind of went on that break with the Friday the 13th episodes because those were kind of just quick ones. But I thought we should do one more.
Say goodbye to it.
We kind of picked the topic of horror movie quotes. So since I'm hosting, you get to go first. What do you got?
All right. Well, mine's going to be a little bit different because this movie is probably first and foremost considered a comedy before a horror movie. And I've talked about this one before, but I thoroughly enjoy this one, and it's Tucker and Dale vs. Evil.
Yeah.
Which is essentially like just makes fun of the horror movie genre. I mean, it's got its scary or jump scare moments and things like that. But one of the funniest parts is because there's so much confusion going on. There are some, the typical college students out partying and everything, and then there are some hillbillies there, and the college students think the hillbillies are killers.
Mm-hmm.
And so they try to essentially attack or defend themselves, and they wind up getting themselves killed. And one of the characters, Tucker, who's one of the hillbillies, is talking with the other one, and he finally comes to the conclusion and says,
all right. I know what this is.
What?
This is a suicide pact.
Is a what?
These kids are coming out here and they're killing themselves all over the woods.
Oh my God, that makes so much sense.
Holy shit, we have got to hide all of the sharp objects.
So if you haven't seen that one, I've recommended it before, but if you haven't seen that one, it's a funny one. It was on Netflix. I don't know if it still is, but yeah, they have a good time making fun of it. It's not like a dumb slapstick like Scary Movie, but it's kind of in that direction. It's a good movie.
Yeah, it's like somewhere between Scary Movie and Friday the 13th Part 6.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a fun one. So mine actually comes from my suggestion of the day, which is Halloween 2. And as the series goes on, like Dr. Loomis kind of loses it more and more, and it's kind of a funny progression. There's the scene where he runs down the stairs to go find Michael, and the cops like show up, and the neighbor's just like,
What's going on out here? Call the police. Tell the sheriff I shot him.
Who?
Tell him he's still on the loose.
Is this some kind of joke? I've been trick-or-treated to death tonight.
You don't know what death is.
I don't know why. Like the first time I saw that movie and he said that, like it just cracked me up. Yeah, that's a classic line. That's kind of I've seen it on shirts before and stuff, so it's kind of made its way out. You don't know what death is. But yeah, so next month we are switching gears and we're gonna do something a little different this time. We are gonna devote an entire month to one actor, and that is Whoa-vember, which is Keanu Reeves month. So the next episode we will be pitching our own Keanu Reeves movie.
Dun dun dun.
So I hope you guys enjoyed Horror Month, and I hope you look forward to Wovember. Until then, as always, be kind, rewind.